Let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Burial. The November rain fell in sheets across Meadowbrook Cemetery, turning the freshly dug earth into dark, clotted mud. Daniel Daly stood alone under a black umbrella, watching the mahogany casket descend into the ground. His wife of 8 years, Erica Warner Daly, was being laid to rest 3 days after what the police called a tragic single-vehicle accident. Daniel was 36, lean and angular, with the kind of face that revealed nothing. A skill honed from 15 years working as a crisis negotiator for the Portland Police Bureau before he transitioned into private consulting. People always said he had a poker face. Today, that face was carved from granite. The official mourners had dispersed an hour ago. Erica's parents, her sister Kayla Weber, a handful of colleagues from the advertising firm where she'd worked. Daniel had asked for time alone. The cemetery workers lingered near their truck, smoking cigarettes and waiting for him to leave so they could finish filling the grave. He studied the headstone, already in place. Erica Marie Warner Daly, 1989 to 2025. Beloved wife, daughter, sister. Beloved wife. The words tasted like ash in his mouth. Daniel had married Erica 7 months after they met at a mutual friend's wedding. She'd been radiant that night, blonde hair cascading over bare shoulders, green eyes that seemed to catch every light in the room. She was vivacious, spontaneous, everything Daniel wasn't. She filled the silences in his life with laughter. Or so he'd thought. 3 months ago, things had changed. Erica became distant, distracted. She'd smile at her phone and tuck it away when he entered the room. She started working late, going out with clients on weekends. Daniel's instincts, trained by years of reading people in high-pressure situations, screamed warnings. But he'd pushed them down. He'd trusted her. Now she was dead, and the police report said she'd been driving home from a friend's house at midnight when she lost control on a rain-slicked curve near Forest Park. Blood alcohol level, 0.12. Cause of death, blunt force trauma. Case closed. Except Daniel had seen the photos the traffic investigator had reluctantly shared. The angle of impact was wrong. The skid marks suggested someone else had been there. And Erica rarely drank. Never enough to be legally impaired. Mr. Daly? The voice came from behind him, soft and trembling. Daniel turned. A woman stood 15 feet away, just beyond the reach of his umbrella. She was perhaps 30, with dark hair plastered to her skull by the rain, mascara running in black rivulets down her pale cheeks. She wore no coat, just a gray dress that clung to her shaking frame. "I'm sorry to intrude," she said, her voice breaking. "I'm so sorry. I need to tell you what really happened that night." Daniel's entire body went still. He studied her face. The raw anguish there looked genuine, but he'd learned long ago that people could fake almost anything. "Who are you?" "My name is Kelsey Waters. I was there when Erica died." Fresh sobs racked her body. "I should have stopped it. I should have done something, but I was so scared, and now she's dead, and it's all my fault." "What did you say?" Daniel's voice cut through her breakdown like a blade. "You were there?" Kelsey nodded frantically, digging into her purse with trembling hands. She pulled out a small USB drive, black and nondescript. "I recorded everything on my phone that night. I was supposed to delete it, but I couldn't. Please," she thrust the drive toward him. "Watch it alone. Then burn it. Don't let anyone else see it, or they'll kill me too." Daniel took the drive, his fingers closing around it like a vice. "Who's they?" But Kelsey was already backing away, her eyes darting toward the cemetery entrance. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. She deserved better than this. You deserved better." She turned and ran, disappearing between the rows of headstones like a ghost. Daniel stood frozen, the USB drive hot in his palm despite the cold rain. Every instinct told him to chase her, to demand answers, but years of negotiations had taught him when to press and when to wait. This woman was terrified. Pushing her now would only make her bolt completely. He looked down at the drive, then back at Erica's grave. "What the hell did you get into?" he whispered. The cemetery workers approached cautiously. "Sir, we need to finish here." Daniel pocketed the USB drive and walked away without looking back. His house in the Pearl District felt like a mausoleum. Daniel had been staying at a hotel since the accident, unable to face the empty rooms, the photographs on every wall showing a life that now felt like a lie. But he needed privacy for whatever was on that drive, and nowhere was more private than the home office where he'd built his consulting business. The rain followed him, hammering against the windows as he powered up his laptop and inserted the USB drive. A single video file appeared, truth.mp4. File size, 2.3 gigabytes. Duration, 47 minutes. Daniel's finger hovered over the trackpad. Once he watched this, there was no going back. Whatever was on this video had gotten Erica killed and terrified Kelsey Waters enough to risk approaching him. He clicked play. The video opened with shaky footage, clearly shot from a phone held low and partially concealed. The timestamp read 11:47 p.m., 3 nights ago, the night Erica died. The setting was a parking garage, poorly lit, the sound of rain echoing off concrete. Told you it was handled. That was Erica's voice, sharp with frustration. The camera shifted slightly, revealing Erica standing beside her silver Audi. She was dressed in the same clothes she'd been wearing in the morgue photos, black cocktail dress, heels. But she wasn't alone. A man stood in front of her, tall and broad-shouldered, wearing an expensive suit despite the late hour. Daniel didn't recognize him at first. The angle was bad, the lighting worse. Then the man turned his head slightly, and Daniel's blood turned to ice. Troy Prince. Daniel knew Troy Prince. Everyone in Portland knew Troy Prince. He owned Prince Development Corporation, a real estate empire built on luxury condos and commercial properties. He was 42, married to a former model, father of 3. He sat on the boards of half a dozen charities and had the mayor's ear on every major development project in the city. He was also, apparently, arguing with Daniel's dead wife in a parking garage near midnight. Handled. Troy's voice dripped with contempt. You call this handled? She knows, Erica. Kelsey knows everything. I'll talk to her, Erica insisted. She's my friend. She won't say anything. Your friend is a liability. Troy moved closer, his face now partially visible. His expression was cold, calculated. I've worked too hard to let some receptionist ruin everything because you couldn't keep your mouth shut. Daniel's hands clenched on the edge of his desk. Receptionist. Kelsey Waters worked for Troy Prince, and Erica had been involved with him. How? The video continued. Erica's voice grew desperate. This wasn't supposed to happen like this. You promised no one would get hurt. Plans change. Troy, please. A third figure entered the frame, moving from the shadows behind Erica's car. Daniel recognized him immediately. Shane Walsh, Troy Prince's head of security. Former military, built like a tank, with a reputation for making problems disappear. Erica spun, her face going pale. Shane, what are you doing here? Insurance, Troy said simply. What happened next lasted less than 30 seconds, but Daniel would replay it in his mind for the rest of his life. Shane grabbed Erica from behind, one massive hand clamping over her mouth, the other wrapping around her waist. She struggled, her eyes wide with terror, but Shane was immovable. Troy stepped forward, pulling something from his pocket, a syringe. No, no, no. Daniel heard himself whisper. Troy injected the contents into Erica's neck. Her struggles weakened almost immediately, her body going limp in Shane's arms. They dragged her toward her car and shoved her into the driver's seat. The camera angle shifted as whoever was filming, Kelsey, tried to get a better view while staying hidden. The audio picked up Troy's voice, clinical and detached. Make it look like an accident. Forest Park, the curve near mile marker 7. Drunk driving. There's vodka in her purse. Use that. Stage it properly. Shane grunted acknowledgement. He started Erica's car and drove away, leaving Troy standing alone in the parking garage. The video should have ended there, but it kept going. Troy pulled out his phone and made a call. It's done. Walsh is handling the cleanup. Yes, tonight. What about the other problem? A pause. Good. Make sure Kelsey stays quiet. If she talks, handle her the same way. He hung up and walked out of frame. The video continued for another minute, showing nothing but empty parking spaces, before finally cutting to black. Daniel sat in silence, the screen's glow illuminating his face in the darkened office. His mind processed what he'd seen with the cold efficiency of his training, cataloging every detail, every implication. His wife had been murdered, not killed in an accident, murdered, poisoned or sedated, then placed in her car and driven off a cliff to make it look like drunk driving. And the man who'd ordered it was Troy Prince, one of the most powerful men in Portland. But why? What had Erica known that was worth killing her over? And what was her connection to Troy in the first place? Daniel's hands moved to eject the USB drive, but he froze. Footsteps on the hardwood floor behind him. In his house. Someone was inside. Years of training took over. Daniel smoothly closed the laptop, palming the USB drive as he stood and turned in one fluid motion. His other hand reached for the desk drawer where he kept a Glock 19, but he never made it. "Don't move, Mr. Daly." A man stood in the doorway of the office, silhouetted by the hallway light. As he stepped forward, Daniel recognized him. Mitch Douglas, Troy Prince's attorney and fixer. Mitch was in his 50s, silver-haired, with the kind of smile that never reached his eyes. He wasn't alone. Two men in dark suits flanked him, hands inside their jackets in a universal gesture that said, "We're armed." "How did you get in here?" Daniel kept his voice level, betraying nothing. "Your wife gave Troy a key months ago." Mitch's smile widened. "For late-night visits, you understand." "Did you enjoy the video?" "So they've been watching. Probably had someone tailing Kelsey. Saw her approach him at the cemetery." Daniel's mind raced through scenarios, calculating odds, looking for angles. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said. "Please, Mr. Daly. You're an intelligent man. Former crisis negotiator, private consultant, expert in reading people and situations. Let's not insult each other with obvious lies." Mitch gestured to the laptop. "Kelsey Waters recorded something she shouldn't have. She gave it to you. We'd like it back. And if I don't have it, then we'll tear this house apart until we find it. And if we don't find it here, we'll assume you've hidden it somewhere else, which means you've seen it and know things you shouldn't know. That would be unfortunate for you." Daniel's grip tightened on the USB drive in his pocket. He had one advantage. They didn't know he'd already watched it. If they thought he was still ignorant, he might be able to buy time. "A woman approached me at my wife's funeral," he said carefully. "She was hysterical, barely coherent. She shoved something in my hand and ran. I haven't even looked at it yet." "Is that so?" Mitch's tone said he didn't believe a word. "Then you won't mind handing it over." Daniel had perhaps 3 seconds to make a decision that would determine whether he lived or died. If he gave them the drive, they'd kill him anyway. He'd seen too much, asked too many questions about Erica's death. If he refused, they'd take it by force and kill him. The only option was to create chaos and survive long enough to escape. He made his choice. "You want it?" Daniel pulled the USB drive from his pocket and held it up. "Come get it." Then he threw it, not at Mitch, but at the window behind his desk. The glass shattered with a deafening crash. The USB drive sailed through and disappeared into the rainy night. Mitch's composure cracked for the first time. "Get it," he shouted at his men. "Now." Both guards rushed toward the broken window. Daniel moved like a striking snake, yanking open the desk drawer and pulling out the Glock. He fired 3 shots, not at the men, but at the ceiling light fixture, plunging the room into darkness. Chaos erupted. Someone fired back, muzzle flash illuminating the office in strobing bursts. Daniel was already moving, diving behind the heavy oak desk as bullets chewed through wood and drywall. He fired twice more, forcing the shooters to take cover, then sprinted for the office door. Mitch tried to block his path, but Daniel's fist caught him in the solar plexus. The older man folded with a wheeze. Daniel shouldered past him into the hallway, moving toward the front door on pure instinct. He heard shouting behind him, "Stop him! He's heading outside." But he'd already yanked open the door and plunged into the rain-soaked night. His car was parked on the street, but there was no time. More men were coming around the house from the back. 3, maybe 4 figures in the darkness. Daniel ran. He knew this neighborhood, knew every alley and shortcut from years of jogging these streets. He cut through a neighbor's yard, vaulted a fence, and emerged on the next block over. Behind him, he could hear pursuit, but it was scattered, disorganized. They'd expected him to fold, not fight. They didn't know Daniel Daly at all. He slowed to a walk as he reached a busier street, tucking the Glock into his waistband and pulling his wet jacket over it. Just another pedestrian on a rainy Portland night. A taxi approached, and he flagged it down. "Where to?" the driver asked. "Downtown," Daniel said, sliding into the back seat. "The Sentinel Hotel." As the taxi pulled away, he glanced back. Figures moved in the rain near his house, searching. But he was gone. Daniel leaned back against the seat, his heart hammering, his mind already 3 steps ahead. He'd bought himself time, but not much. They'd realize soon enough that the USB drive he'd thrown out the window was a decoy. The real drive was still in his other pocket. He'd switched them the moment he'd stood up from the desk, a sleight-of-hand trick from his teenage years as an amateur magician. Troy Prince had murdered his wife. That much was certain now. But why? What had Erica known? What had she been involved in? And most importantly, how was Daniel going to make them all pay? As the taxi merged into traffic, Daniel pulled out his phone and began making calls. He had resources, contacts, people who owed him favors. If Troy Prince wanted a war, Daniel would give him one. But first, he needed to understand the battlefield. The first call went to an old friend from his PPB days, Alan Dixon, a detective in the fraud division who'd never quite bought the official story about Erica's accident. "Alan," Daniel said when the call connected, "I need everything you can find on Troy Prince and Prince Development Corporation. Everything, financial records, business deals, lawsuits, complaints, anything." "Daniel? Jesus, I thought you were holed up mourning. Erica was murdered. I have proof, and I need your help." A long pause. "Then, tell me what you need." Daniel smiled grimly as rain streaked down the taxi's windows. The game had begun, and this time, he was playing for keeps. Chapter 2. The Conspiracy. The Sentinel Hotel's penthouse suite had been Daniel's refuge for the past 3 days. He'd checked in under a false name, Marcus Cole, identity he'd maintained for undercover consulting work, and paid cash for a week. The room had everything he needed: secure Wi-Fi, multiple exits, and a clear view of the street below. Now it served as a war room. Daniel stood before a makeshift evidence board he'd created using the suite's wide mirror and dry erase markers. On one side were photos of the key players, printed from his laptop: Troy Prince, Shane Walsh, Mitch Douglas, and at the center, Erica. On the other side were questions, timelines, and connections drawn in red marker. His phone buzzed. "Alan Dixon, tell me you have something," Daniel answered. "You're not going to like it." Alan's voice crackled through the speaker. "Troy Prince is cleaner than a whistle on paper. No arrests, no complaints, not even a parking ticket. Prince Development Corporation is a model corporate citizen, pays taxes on time, no labor disputes, stellar safety record. There has to be something." "I didn't say there was nothing. I said you won't like it." Alan's tone shifted. "I pulled property records for the past 5 years. Prince Development has acquired over 40 parcels of land throughout Portland, most in neighborhoods slated for urban renewal. The weird part? Every single acquisition was below market value, way below. We're talking properties worth $2 million selling for half that." Daniel's mind raced. How is that possible? That's the question, isn't it? I dug deeper. Most of the sellers were elderly homeowners, small business owners, people who didn't have sophisticated legal representation. And in every case, there were unusual circumstances around the sale. One owner's business mysteriously failed 6 months before the sale. Another owner's daughter got arrested on drug charges that were later dropped. A third owner's husband lost his job right before they sold. Coercion, Daniel said. Prince is forcing people to sell. Can't prove it, but yeah, that's my read. The pattern is too consistent to be coincidence. Someone is systematically targeting property owners, creating crises in their lives, then swooping in with cash offers when they're desperate. Daniel's marker moved across the mirror, adding new connections. Who else is involved? That's where it gets interesting. I cross-referenced Prince Development's legal team. Mitch Douglas handles most of their contracts, but there's another name that keeps popping up: Terrence Chapman. He's a city councilman, chairs the Urban Development Committee. Every zoning variance Prince Development needs, every permit, every approval, it all goes through Chapman's committee, and it all gets approved without question. Chapman's on the payroll. I can't prove that either, but his financial disclosure forms show some questionable consulting income. Nothing illegal on the surface, but suspicious as hell. Alan paused. "Daniel, if you're thinking about going after these people, you need to understand what you're up against. Troy Prince has connections at every level: city government, state legislators, even federal. The man had lunch with the governor last month. Whatever you're planning." "I'm not planning anything," Daniel lied smoothly. "I just want to understand what happened to my wife." Alan didn't buy it. They'd known each other too long. "Just be careful. Men like Prince don't leave loose ends." "Neither do I." After hanging up, Daniel added Terrence Chapman's name to the board. The picture was becoming clearer. Troy Prince was running an organized scheme to acquire valuable Portland real estate through intimidation and manipulation. Erica had somehow discovered this operation. But how? And why would that knowledge be worth killing her over? His phone buzzed again, an unknown number. Daniel let it ring 3 times, tracing the call through a security app. Local number, no red flags. He answered, "Yes." "Mr. Daly?" A woman's voice, trembling. "It's Kelsey Waters. Please don't hang up. I'm listening. I saw what happened at your house last night. I was watching from down the street. When you threw that USB drive out the window, She took a shaky breath. "I know you switched it. I saw you. You're smarter than they think." Daniel's estimation of Kelsey rose several notches. "What do you want?" "To help. I know things about Troy and what he's been doing. Things about your wife." Her voice broke. "Erica was my friend. My real friend. And I got her killed." "Meet me," Daniel said. "But not anywhere public. Do you know the Blue Moon Cafe in Selwood? The one that closed down last year?" "Exactly. Midnight tonight. Come alone, and make sure you're not followed." "How will I know if I'm being followed?" "You won't, but I will be." At 11:30 p.m., Daniel was already in position on the roof of a building across from the shuttered cafe. He'd arrived 2 hours early, watching the street through a compact monocular he'd purchased from a hunting supply store. The November cold bit through his jacket, but he barely noticed. At 11:47, a lone figure approached on foot, Kelsey Waters, wearing a dark coat and hood. She walked slowly, checking behind her every few steps. Amateur surveillance detection, but earnest. No one appeared to be following her. Daniel gave it another 10 minutes, watching every car that passed, every window, every shadow. Finally satisfied, he climbed down through the building's fire escape and crossed the street. He picked the cafe's back door lock in under 30 seconds and slipped inside. Kelsey nearly screamed when he materialized from the darkness. "Easy," Daniel said softly. "It's just me." She pressed a hand to her chest, breathing hard. "Jesus, you could have warned me. Warnings defeat the purpose." He studied her in the dim light filtering through the grimy windows. She looked exhausted, with dark circles under her eyes and a nervous energy that suggested she hadn't slept since the cemetery. "Why did you give me that video?" "Because Erica deserved better than to be erased like she never mattered." Kelsey's voice hardened with anger. "Troy killed her because she found out what he was doing, and he's going to get away with it. The police think it was an accident. Her parents think she was drinking and driving. Everyone believes the lie except you and me. What was she doing with Troy Prince in the first place?" Kelsey hesitated. Then, she was having an affair with him. The words hit Daniel like a physical blow, even though he'd already suspected. Hearing it confirmed was different. He kept his expression neutral. "For how long?" 6 months, maybe 7. I worked as a receptionist at Prince Development. That's how I knew Erica. She'd come by sometimes to meet Troy, and we'd talk. She was always so kind to me, never treated me like I was just the help, you know? We became friends." Tears welled in Kelsey's eyes. She was going to leave him. Troy, I mean. She told me 2 weeks ago that she was going to end it and work on her marriage. She said she'd made a terrible mistake and wanted to make things right with you. Daniel absorbed this information without comment. Was it true? Or was Kelsey misreading the situation? He'd spent years analyzing human behavior, detecting lies, but grief and guilt could warp perceptions. If she was leaving him, why did he kill her, he asked. Because of what she found. Kelsey pulled out her phone, swiping through photos. About a month ago, Erica was at Troy's office late one night. She had a key. He'd given it to her for their meetings. She was waiting for him and got bored, started snooping. She found files, documents about the property acquisitions. She turned the phone toward Daniel. The screen showed a photograph of documents spread across a desk, contracts, financial statements, what looked like surveillance photos of elderly people in their homes. "She took pictures?" Daniel asked. "Dozens. She showed them to me, asked if I knew what they meant. I worked there, so I recognized some of the names, property owners who'd sold to Prince Development. But Erica noticed something I missed. The patterns." Kelsey swiped to another photo, this one showing a handwritten ledger with columns of names, dates, and dollar amounts. This was the smoking gun. It's a log of payments to various people, city inspectors, police officers, private investigators, even some thugs. Troy was keeping a record of everyone he was paying off to run his scheme. Daniel's mind clicked into overdrive. Why would he keep a physical ledger? That's evidence. Insurance, I think. If someone turned on him, he could use it to prove they were complicit. Mutually assured destruction. Kelsey's hands shook as she pocketed her phone. Erica confronted him about it. She said she was going to the FBI. That's when everything went wrong. He killed her to protect his operation. Yes, and he'll kill anyone else who knows about it. Including me. Including you now. Daniel stepped to the window, looking out at the empty street. His wife had died because she'd developed a conscience, because she'd tried to do the right thing. The irony was bitter. She'd betrayed him with Troy Prince, but when she discovered what kind of man Prince really was, she tried to expose him. And it had gotten her murdered. Do you still have access to Prince Development? He asked. I haven't gone back since that night. I called in sick, but they're going to expect me to return or resign soon. Don't resign. Go back. Kelsey's eyes went wide. Are you insane? They know I was there that night. Mitch Douglas called me the next day, asked if I'd seen anything unusual. I lied, said I left early, but I don't think he believed me. All the more reason to act normal. If you disappear, it confirms their suspicions. But if you go back, pretend nothing happened, they might think they're safe. Daniel turned to face her. I need you to be my eyes and ears inside that company. Can you do that? You want me to spy on them? I want you to help me destroy them. Kelsey stared at him for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. What do you need? Everything. Financial records, client lists, communications between Troy and his people. Anything that proves what he's doing. Daniel's voice was ice and iron. And I need to know about Shane Walsh. Where does he live? What's his routine? Who are his associates? Shane is Troy's enforcer. He handles the dirty work, intimidation, surveillance, probably worse. He lives in a condo near the waterfront, drives a black Escalade. He's always armed, always has at least one other guy with him. What about Mitch Douglas? Mitch is the brains. He structures the deals, handles the legal side, makes everything look legitimate on paper. He's got an office downtown, but he spends most of his time at Troy's estate in Lake Oswego. Kelsey bit her lip. Mr. Daly, these people are dangerous. They've killed before, and they'll kill again. What makes you think you can stop them? Daniel's smile was cold and predatory. Because they think I'm just a grieving widower who'll fade away quietly. They don't know who I really am or what I'm capable of. He stepped closer, but they're going to find out. And by the time they realize their mistake, it'll be too late. Over the next week, Daniel became a ghost. He moved between safe houses, cheap motels, short-term rentals, even sleeping in his car some nights, never staying in one place long enough to be tracked. He grew a beard, wore colored contacts, changed his appearance enough that casual observers wouldn't recognize him. But he was far from idle. Alan Dixon continued feeding him information from the inside. The detective had opened a quiet investigation into Troy Prince, operating under the radar to avoid tipping off anyone on Prince's payroll. What he found was damning. A pattern of property acquisitions that matched perfectly with sudden misfortunes befalling the sellers. Business licenses revoked. Health inspections failed. Relatives arrested. All creating pressure to sell. It's a protection racket dressed up as real estate development. Alan told Daniel during a clandestine meeting in Forest Park. Prince identifies properties he wants, then systematically destroys the owners' lives until they have no choice but to sell cheap. Then he flips the properties for massive profits or develops luxury condos. How many properties are we talking about? 42 over the past 5 years. Conservative estimate of illegal profits, $73 million. Daniel whistled low. That's a serious operation. He must have a whole network of people making it work. He does. I've identified at least 20 individuals who've received payments from shell companies linked to Prince Development. City officials, cops, private security, lawyers. It's a web, and everyone in it is dirty. What about Terrence Chapman? The councilman is neck deep. I found bank records showing regular deposits from a consulting firm that exists only on paper. It's owned by another shell company, which is owned by another, but at the end of the chain sits Troy Prince. Alan's expression was grim. Chapman has been greasing the wheels for every zoning change, every variance, every permit Prince needs. In exchange, he gets $250,000 a year in consulting fees. Daniel added this to his mental database. The conspiracy was bigger than he'd imagined, and that meant more people to take down. Good. He wanted them all to burn. Kelsey reported in Daily. using burner phones and dead drops to pass information. She'd returned to work at Prince Development, playing the role of the oblivious receptionist. It was dangerous work, but she was motivated by guilt and anger in equal measure. Her intelligence was invaluable. She provided schedules, meeting notes, financial statements she copied when no one was looking. Slowly, Daniel built a comprehensive picture of Troy Prince's empire and its vulnerabilities. But information alone wouldn't be enough. He needed leverage, the kind that would bring the entire operation crashing down. And for that, he needed the one thing Troy Prince feared most, the original ledger Erica had photographed. According to Kelsey, the ledger was kept in a safe in Troy's home office, a sprawling estate in Lake Oswego worth $12 million. The property was gated, patrolled by private security, monitored by cameras. Breaking in would be suicidal, unless Daniel could get an invitation. The opportunity came from an unexpected source, Veronica Lehman. Veronica was Troy Prince's wife, a former catalog model who'd married money and now spent her days on charity boards and social committees. Daniel had researched her extensively and found an interesting detail. She was the chairwoman of the Portland Arts Foundation, which was hosting a gala fundraiser in 2 weeks. The gala would be held at the Prince Estate. 500 guests, catered by the city's finest restaurants, entertainment by a nationally known jazz band. And the guest list was still being finalized. Daniel made a phone call. Portland Arts Foundation, how may I help you? I'd like to make a donation to support the upcoming gala, Daniel said, using a carefully modulated voice that sounded nothing like his own. A significant donation. Of course, sir. May I have your name? Jeffrey Stanton. I'm a private equity consultant, recently relocated to Portland. I'd like to contribute $50,000. There was a brief pause, the kind of pause that came from someone recalculating their level of enthusiasm. Mr. Stanton, that's incredibly generous. Would you like to attend the gala as our honored guest? I'd be delighted. 48 hours later, Jeffrey Stanton received an engraved invitation to the most exclusive party in Portland. And Daniel Daly had his way inside Troy Prince's fortress. But infiltrating the gala was just the first step. The real challenge would be getting to the safe, cracking it, and escaping with the ledger, all while surrounded by 500 witnesses and Troy Prince's security team. Daniel had faced long odds before. This time, he was prepared to burn every bridge and cash in every favor to get what he needed. Because Troy Prince had taken everything from him, and Daniel was going to return the favor with interest. Chapter 3. The Infiltration. The night of the gala arrived with crisp autumn air and a sky full of stars. Daniel adjusted the bow tie of his rented tuxedo and checked his reflection in the rearview mirror of his newly acquired sedan, a nondescript Toyota purchased with cash from a private seller. Jeffrey Stanton looked back at him, clean-shaven, hair dyed dark brown and slicked back, wearing tortoiseshell glasses with clear lenses. The transformation was subtle but effective. He'd practiced the persona for days, adopting a slight Midwestern accent and the mannerisms of old money. Understated, confident, slightly aloof. Jeffrey Stanton had a fabricated but verifiable history. Stanford MBA, 15 years in private equity, recent widower relocating to Portland to start fresh. Daniel had seeded the internet with just enough information to withstand casual scrutiny. The drive to Lake Oswego took 30 minutes. Daniel spent the time reviewing the mental blueprints of Troy Prince's estate, compiled from satellite imagery, public records, and floor plans Kelsey had photographed during a company party 6 months ago. He knew every room, every exit, every security camera. The safe in Troy's office was a Browning Pro steel, high-end but not impenetrable. Daniel had practiced on an identical model for the past week, shaving his time down to 4 minutes. In and out before anyone noticed he was missing. That was the plan anyway. The estate's gates opened onto a circular driveway already packed with luxury vehicles. Mercedes, Teslas, a Bentley Continental, a vintage Rolls-Royce. Valet attendants in crisp uniforms directed traffic. Daniel handed over his keys and walked toward the entrance, where Veronica Lehman herself greeted guests. She was stunning in a silver gown that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. Her smile was professionally warm but empty, the expression of someone who'd greeted 10,000 strangers at 10,000 parties. "Good evening and welcome," she said, extending a manicured hand. "Thank you so much for supporting the arts." My pleasure entirely, Daniel replied in Jeffrey's voice. Jeffrey Stanton, I'm honored to be here. Veronica's eyes flickered with recognition, not of Daniel, but of the name, the big donor. Her smile warmed by several degrees. Mr. Stanton, we're so grateful for your generosity. Please, enjoy the evening. If there's anything you need, don't hesitate to ask. Daniel nodded graciously and moved inside. The interior of the Prince estate was exactly what he'd expected. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, original artwork worth more than most houses. The main ballroom had been transformed into an elegant wonderland of white flowers, golden candlelight, and a jazz quartet playing Cole Porter in the corner. Waiters circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Portland's elite mingled in clusters, their laughter echoing off the high ceilings. Daniel accepted a glass of champagne he wouldn't drink and began his reconnaissance. He noted security personnel positioned discreetly throughout the house, 8 that he could see, probably more outside. Shane Walsh stood near the bar, his bulk barely contained by an expensive suit. He was scanning the crowd with professional wariness. Troy Prince himself held court near the French doors leading to the patio. He was laughing at something Terrence Chapman had said, one hand holding scotch, the other resting proprietarily on a young woman's lower back. Not his wife, some other conquest. The man's arrogance was palpable, the confidence of someone who believed himself untouchable. Daniel felt cold rage settle in his gut, but he kept Jeffrey's pleasant expression fixed in place. Not yet. Soon, but not yet. He circulated through the party, making small talk with strangers, establishing his presence. Everyone believed Jeffrey Stanton was exactly who he claimed to be. Why wouldn't they? Rich people trusted other rich people. At 9:30, Daniel made his move. He approached one of the waiters carrying a tray of champagne. Excuse me, could you direct me to the restroom? Of course, sir. Down that hallway, 3rd door on the left. Daniel thanked him and headed in the indicated direction. But he didn't stop at the 3rd door. He continued to the end of the hallway, where a staircase led to the 2nd floor. A velvet rope blocked access, with a small sign, Private, Authorized Personnel Only. He glanced back. No one was watching. He stepped over the rope and climbed the stairs. The 2nd floor was dimly lit and quiet, insulated from the party noise below. Daniel moved quickly but carefully, counting doors. Troy's office was the 4th on the right, according to the floor plans. He tried the handle. Locked, but a simple tumbler mechanism. He pulled out a lock-pick set, disguised as a fountain pen, and had the door open in 20 seconds. Inside, the office was exactly as Kelsey had described. Massive mahogany desk, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a wet bar stocked with top-shelf liquor. And in the corner, partially hidden behind a painting of a hunting scene, the safe. Daniel closed the door quietly and crossed to the painting. He swung it aside on its hinges, revealing the Browning Pro Steel. Keypad lock, 12-digit combination. He pulled out his phone and activated a custom app designed by a hacker he'd hired, a kid in his 20s who owed Daniel a favor from a past case. The app interfaced with a small electronic device Daniel placed against the safe's keypad. It began running through combinations, using an algorithm based on common patterns and Troy's known biographical data. The process would take 3 to 4 minutes. Daniel stepped back to the desk, using the time to search for anything else useful. The drawers were mostly empty. Troy was too smart to leave incriminating documents lying around. But the computer was logged in, screensaver active. Daniel touched the mouse. The screen came to life, showing Troy's email client. He had perhaps 60 seconds before someone might come looking. He navigated to Troy's sent folder, scanning subject lines. Most were mundane business correspondence, but one caught his eye. Chapman payment schedule. Daniel clicked it open and quickly photographed the email with his phone. It was a message to Mitch Douglas, confirming payments to Terrence Chapman and 2 other city councilmen. Concrete evidence of bribery. Behind him, the safe emitted a soft beep. The app had cracked the code. Daniel turned and pulled open the heavy door. Inside were stacks of cash, some jewelry, property deeds, and, there, a leather-bound ledger identical to the one in Erica's photos. He pulled it out and flipped through the pages. Names, dates, amounts. A complete record of every illegal payment Troy had made over the past 5 years. This was it. The evidence that would destroy him. Daniel tucked the ledger inside his tuxedo jacket and closed the safe. He'd just swung the painting back into place when he heard voices in the hallway. "Told you, I saw someone come up here. Probably just a guest looking for a bathroom. Then why isn't he back yet?" Daniel moved fast. He couldn't leave through the door. They'd see him. The office had 2 windows, both overlooking the back patio. He crossed to the nearest one and looked out. 20-foot drop to manicured lawn, security personnel visible in the distance. The office door handle rattled. Decision time. Daniel opened the window, climbed onto the sill, and dropped into a controlled fall. He hit the grass in a roll, absorbing the impact, and immediately moved into the shadows of the garden. Behind him, he heard shouting from the second-floor window. "There! Someone just jumped." Floodlights blazed to life across the grounds. Daniel ran. The estate's perimeter wall was 8 feet tall, topped with decorative but functional spikes. He sprinted toward it, footsteps pounding behind him. Shane Walsh's voice boomed across the garden. "Stop him. Don't let him reach the wall." Daniel didn't slow. He hit the wall at full speed, planting one foot on a decorative planter and using the momentum to vault upward. His hands caught the top of the wall between the spikes. He pulled himself up and over in one fluid motion, dropping to the other side into the wooded area beyond the property. Searchlights swept the woods, but Daniel was already moving, using the trees for cover. He emerged onto a residential street 2 blocks from the estate and slowed to a walk, straightening his tuxedo and catching his breath. His car was still at the estate, no way to retrieve it now. He pulled out his phone and called a rideshare, using a prepaid account under yet another fake name. The car arrived 8 minutes later. Daniel climbed in, giving an address in downtown Portland. "Big party at that house back there," the driver commented, gesturing toward the commotion visible in the distance. "Looks like something happened." "I wouldn't know," Daniel said pleasantly. "Quiet evening for me." As the car pulled away, he patted the ledger tucked inside his jacket. Troy Prince had just lost the one thing keeping his empire intact, and he didn't even know it yet. But he would, very soon. Chapter 4. The Revelation. Daniel spent the night in a motel off Highway 26, one of those anonymous places that rented rooms by the hour and didn't ask questions. He sat cross-legged on the bed under harsh fluorescent light, the stolen ledger open before him, his phone camera clicking steadily as he photographed every page. The ledger was a masterpiece of incrimination. Troy Prince had documented everything with meticulous precision. Payments to corrupt city officials, bribes to building inspectors, fees to private investigators for conducting surveillance on property owners, and perhaps most damning, payments to Shane Walsh and others for what was delicately termed property acquisition facilitation, code for intimidation, vandalism, and violence. One entry made Daniel's blood run cold. May 15th, 2025, S. Walsh, Special Project, E. Werner Removal, $75,000. The date was 3 days before Erica died. Removal, not acquisition facilitation. Removal. Troy had paid Shane Walsh $75,000 to kill Daniel's wife. He sat back, breathing slowly, forcing down the rage that threatened to consume him. Anger was a tool, not a master. He needed to think clearly, plan precisely. Emotion was the enemy of execution. By dawn, he'd photographed all 247 pages of the ledger and uploaded the images to 3 separate encrypted cloud accounts. The original ledger he wrapped in waterproof plastic and buried in a prearranged dead drop location known only to him, beneath a specific oak tree in Mount Tabor Park, marked by GPS coordinates and 3 feet underground. If anything happened to him, Alan Dixon had instructions to retrieve it. But Daniel didn't plan on anything happening to him. At 7 a.m., his phone rang. Kelsey Waters, calling from a burner. "They know," she said without preamble, her voice tight with fear. "Troy knows someone got into his safe. He's losing his mind. Shane and Mitch are tearing through employee files, trying to figure out who it could have been. They're interviewing everyone who worked the party, caterers, valets, security, everyone. Are you safe?" "For now. I wasn't working the event, so I'm not on their radar yet. But Mr. Daly, they're talking about going to the police, reporting a burglary." Daniel almost laughed. Troy Prince isn't going to the police. He can't report what was stolen without admitting what was in his safe. He's trapped. Then what will he do? He'll hunt for the thief quietly, using his own people, which means he'll be distracted, off balance. That's when we strike. Strike how? Meet me at the usual place. 2 hours. I'll explain everything. The usual place was an abandoned warehouse in northwest Portland's industrial district, one of dozens of decaying buildings awaiting development. Daniel had scouted it weeks ago as a secure meeting location. He arrived first, as always, and verified the space was clean before Kelsey showed up 20 minutes later, pale and shaking. "You look terrible," Daniel observed. "I haven't slept in 3 days. Every time my phone rings, I think it's them calling to tell me they know." She collapsed onto a dusty crate. "How do you stay so calm?" "Practice." Daniel spread a series of photographs across a makeshift table, printouts of the ledger pages. This is what Troy was protecting. This is why he killed Erica. Kelsey leaned forward, scanning the entries. Her eyes widened. "My God, this is everything. Payments, names, dates. This could bring down half the city government. It will bring them all down. But we need to be smart about how we use it." Daniel pointed to specific entries. Troy has been paying Terrence Chapman $250,000 annually for the past 4 years. Chapman's been fast-tracking every zoning variance and permit Prince development needs. But Chapman isn't working alone. Look here. Payments to 2 other city councilmen, Rita Flores and Gordon Hayes. They're all complicit. How do we expose them without exposing ourselves? We don't expose them directly. We give the evidence to someone who can use it officially. Daniel pulled out his phone and placed a call on speaker. Alan Dixon answered on the second ring. "Tell me you've got something good," the detective said. "Better than good. I'm sending you files now. Encrypted, password protected. You'll need to view them on a secure device, not connected to any network." "What am I looking at?" "Evidence of a corruption conspiracy involving Troy Prince, Terrence Chapman, and multiple city officials. Detailed financial records of bribes, payoffs, and at least 1 murder for hire. Everything you need to build a RICO case." Silence. Then, "Jesus Christ, Daniel. Where did you get this?" "I can't tell you that. But I can tell you it's authentic. Troy Prince kept a ledger documenting every illegal transaction. I have a copy. You stole it. I acquired it. The how doesn't matter. What matters is what you do with it." Alan's voice sharpened. "You know I can't use illegally obtained evidence in court. Everything derived from it would be poisoned fruit. A decent lawyer would get it all thrown out. Then don't use it in court. Use it to build a parallel investigation. You know how this works. Use the ledger as a roadmap. Then construct legitimate probable cause for warrants. Follow the money through official channels. The evidence exists. You just need to know where to look. That could take months." "I don't have months," Daniel said flatly. "These people killed my wife, and they're going to kill again if we don't stop them. I'm giving you a head start. What you do with it is up to you." Another pause. "Then, send the files. I'll see what I can do. But Daniel, be careful. If Troy Prince figures out you're behind this." "He won't." Daniel ended the call and looked at Kelsey. "That's phase 1. Alan will start building the official case. But that's going to take time, and we need to put pressure on Troy now, keep him off balance." "How?" "By hitting him where it hurts. His business." Daniel pulled up a map of Portland on his phone, marking several locations. Troy has 3 major development projects currently underway. One is a luxury condo tower in the Pearl District, another is a mixed-use complex in the Alberta Arts District, and the third is a high-rise hotel near the waterfront. Each project is worth tens of millions, and each is on a tight schedule with financing dependent on hitting specific milestones. "You want to sabotage the projects?" "I want to expose the corruption behind them. Every property Troy owns was acquired through intimidation and fraud. Every permit he holds was obtained through bribes. If we can prove that publicly, the city will be forced to investigate. Projects will shut down, financing will dry up, investors will panic. We'll destroy his empire from the inside." Kelsey nodded slowly. "I can help with that. I have access to all the project files at Prince Development. Contracts, permits, environmental assessments, correspondence with city officials. I can copy everything. Do it. But be careful. Troy is paranoid right now. If he catches you, I know the risks." Her jaw set with determination. "Erica was my friend. She died trying to expose these people. I owe it to her to finish what she started." Daniel studied her for a moment. Kelsey Waters was no longer the frightened receptionist who'd approached him at the cemetery. Grief and purpose had transformed her into something harder, more focused. Good. He needed allies who wouldn't break under pressure. "There's something else," he said. Someone inside Troy's organization has been helping him for years. Someone with access to sensitive information about property owners, financial records, personal histories, vulnerabilities. Troy couldn't run his operation without that kind of intelligence. You think it's someone at Prince Development? No. The information is too specific, too detailed. It's coming from somewhere with broader access. Daniel pulled up a new file on his phone. I've been analyzing the pattern of properties Troy targeted. Many of the owners had recent interactions with city services, building permits, business licenses, property tax assessments. I think Troy has a source inside the city government feeding him information about vulnerable property owners. How do we find out who? We set a trap. The trap required careful preparation. Daniel spent 2 days creating a fictional property owner, Marcus Chun, a 72-year-old widower who owned a prime piece of real estate in the trendy Hawthorne district. Marcus existed only on paper, fabricated records inserted into city databases through a contact Daniel had cultivated during his consulting days. The property was real but actually owned by a shell company Daniel controlled. The setup was simple. Marcus Chin had recently applied for a building permit to renovate his property. The application included financial information showing Marcus was cash poor, with outstanding debts and a recent medical emergency that had depleted his savings. On paper, Marcus Chun was exactly the kind of vulnerable property owner Troy Prince targeted. Now all Daniel had to do was wait. It took 6 days. On the 6th day, Kelsey called with news. Troy's moving on a new property. Hawthorne District, owner named Marcus Chun. Shane Walsh has been assigned to do the preliminary work. Daniel smiled grimly. Perfect. What's the timeline? Shane's scheduled to make first contact tomorrow afternoon. They're going to pose as legitimate developers interested in purchasing the property. And after Marcus refuses? Then they escalate. Standard playbook. Create problems until he's desperate enough to sell cheap. Not this time, Daniel said. This time, we're going to catch them in the act. The next afternoon, Daniel was waiting at the fictional Marcus Chin's property, a modest craftsman house that actually belonged to an elderly woman named Agnes Miles who'd agreed to help after Daniel explained a carefully edited version of the situation. Agnes had gone to stay with her daughter in Seattle, leaving Daniel alone in the house. At 2:17 p.m., a black Escalade pulled up outside. Shane Walsh emerged, accompanied by another man Daniel didn't recognize. Younger, athletic, with the cold eyes of someone comfortable with violence. They knocked on the door. Daniel answered, wearing prosthetic aging makeup and the shuffling gait of an old man. Yes, Mr. Chun. Shane's smile was practiced, professional. My name is Shane Walsh. I represent some investors interested in properties in this neighborhood. Do you have a few minutes to discuss a potential sale? I'm not selling, Daniel said in Marcus Chin's quavering voice. I understand, sir. But perhaps if you heard our offer. I said I'm not selling. This is my home. Now please leave. Shane's smile never wavered, but something cold flickered in his eyes. Of course, Mr. Chun. But if you change your mind, here's my card. He held out a business card. Daniel took it, making his hand shake slightly. Goodbye. He closed the door and watched through the window as Shane and his companion returned to the Escalade. They didn't leave immediately. Instead, Shane made a phone call, speaking for several minutes before finally driving away. Daniel immediately removed the aging makeup and contacted Kelsey. Phase 1 complete. Shane made contact. What's happening at the office? Troy's meeting with Shane and Mitch right now. They're planning the next steps. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I can hear them through Troy's office door. They're talking about staging a building code violation, getting the property condemned so Marcus will be forced to sell. Perfect. Let them try. 3 days later, a city building inspector named Harry Ayers showed up at the property, clipboard in hand, claiming to have received a complaint about structural issues. Daniel, once again disguised as Marcus Chun, let him inside. Harry conducted a cursory inspection, then delivered his verdict with bureaucratic solemnity. I'm afraid I've found several serious code violations, Mr. Chun. Foundation cracks, outdated electrical, possible asbestos. I'm going to have to issue a condemnation notice. You'll need to vacate the property within 30 days and bring everything up to code before you can occupy it again. But I don't have money for repairs, Daniel protested, playing his role. I'm sorry, sir. The law is the law. You'll receive official notice within a week. As Harry Ayers left, Daniel photographed him through the window, capturing his license plate and face. Then he made a call. "Alan, I need background on a city building inspector named Harry Ayres. Full employment history, financial records, anything that connects him to Troy Prince." 24 hours later, Alan delivered. Ayres has been with the city for 12 years. Clean record, no complaints. But his bank statements show regular cash deposits, $3,000 every month for the past 2 years. The deposits don't match his salary schedule. Payments from Troy Prince. Can't prove it directly, but the timing matches up with properties that were condemned and later acquired by Prince Development. Ayres is on the payroll. Daniel added Harry Ayres to his mental list of targets. The corruption ran deeper than he'd imagined, not just politicians, but city employees at every level. Troy Prince had built a machine, and everyone in it was greased with dirty money. But machines could be dismantled, one piece at a time. Chapter 5, The Pressure. 2 weeks after the Marcus Chin trap, Daniel's campaign against Troy Prince shifted into high gear. He'd spent the time carefully constructing a multi-pronged attack designed to simultaneously destroy Troy's business, expose his political connections, and leave him legally vulnerable on multiple fronts. The first strike came through the media. Daniel had compiled a comprehensive dossier on Troy Prince's property acquisitions, complete with testimonials from former property owners who'd been intimidated into selling. He'd tracked down 12 people willing to talk, elderly homeowners, small business owners, all of them victims of Troy's scheme. Their stories were heartbreaking. Threats, vandalism, mysterious fires, family members suddenly facing legal troubles. Daniel packaged these testimonials with property records showing the below-market sales, along with carefully redacted excerpts from Troy's ledger showing payments to city officials. He couldn't reveal the whole ledger, not yet, but he could show enough to raise serious questions. He sent the dossier to Miriam Harvey, an investigative journalist for the Portland Tribune known for her aggressive reporting on city corruption. Miriam had won 2 journalism awards for exposing a kickback scheme involving the former mayor. If anyone would run with this story, it was her. She called Daniel, using his Jeffrey Stanton identity, 3 days later. "This is incredible," she said without preamble. "If even half of this is true, it's the biggest corruption scandal Portland has seen in decades. But I need to verify everything. Can you put me in touch with your sources?" "I can arrange that, but you need to protect their identities. Some of them are genuinely afraid for their lives." "I understand. I'll use anonymous sourcing where necessary. But Mr. Stanton, I have to ask, why are you bringing this to me? What's your stake in this?" Daniel had prepared for this question. "I'm a real estate consultant. I was approached by one of Prince Development's victims, an elderly man who'd been forced to sell his family home. I started digging and found a pattern. I believe in ethical business practices, Ms. Harvey. What Troy Prince is doing isn't just illegal, it's predatory." It was close enough to the truth. Miriam seemed satisfied. "Give me 2 weeks," she said. "I'll have a story ready to publish." While Miriam Harvey worked on the media angle, Daniel focused on the financial pressure. Troy Prince's empire was built on leverage. He used financing from major banks to fund his development projects, counting on rapid completion and sale to pay back the loans with interest. If those projects stalled, the financing would become untenable. Daniel identified Troy's most vulnerable project, the Riverfront Tower, a 30-story luxury hotel under construction near the Willamette River. The project was financed through a syndicate of investors who'd been promised completion within 18 months. They were now at month 16, and the tower was behind schedule. Through shell companies, Daniel began purchasing the surrounding properties, small lots, parking areas, a defunct warehouse, driving up prices, and creating complications for the Riverfront Tower's planned parking structure. The construction company couldn't complete the project without resolving the property disputes, and suddenly they were mired in legal complications. Simultaneously, Daniel anonymously reported the project to state environmental regulators, citing concerns about potential contamination of the river. The report was technically baseless, but it triggered a mandatory inspection that halted construction for 2 weeks while regulators conducted their review. 2 weeks might not sound like much, but in construction, delays were money. Every day the Riverfront Tower sat incomplete cost Troy Prince $60,000 in financing fees, labor costs, and penalties. Daniel could afford to wait. Troy Prince couldn't. The third prong of attack targeted Troy's political protection. Terrence Chapman was the linchpin of Troy's corrupt network. Without Chapman smoothing the way through city government, Troy's entire operation would collapse. Daniel began systematically feeding information to Chapman's political rivals. He sent anonymous packages to opposing candidates containing evidence of Chapman's financial ties to Troy Prince, along with voting records showing Chapman consistently favored projects that benefited Prince development. The opposition didn't waste the ammunition. Within a week, Chapman was facing pointed questions from reporters about his relationship with Troy Prince. His explanations were vague and defensive, raising more questions than they answered. Then Daniel escalated. He leaked information about Chapman's consulting income to the Oregon Government Ethics Commission, filing a formal complaint alleging that Chapman had failed to properly disclose payments from businesses affected by his official duties. The commission was required by law to investigate. Chapman was now fighting on two fronts: a political challenge from rivals and a legal investigation from ethics regulators. His ability to protect Troy Prince was severely compromised. By the third week, the pressure was showing results. Kelsey reported that Troy's demeanor had changed dramatically. He was short-tempered, paranoid, demanding constant updates from Shane Walsh and Mitch Douglas. The theft of the ledger had rattled him badly, and now his business was under assault from multiple directions. "He's talking about liquidating some assets," Kelsey said during one of their secure calls. "Selling off properties to raise cash. The riverfront tower delays have spooked the investors, and some are threatening to pull out. If that happens, the whole project could collapse." "Good," Daniel said. "Keep me updated on any major decisions. I need to know if he's planning anything desperate." "Like what?" "Like trying to kill anyone he suspects of being behind his problems." The warning proved prescient. 2 days later, Kelsey called in a panic. "Daniel, you need to disappear. Now." Troy's figured out that someone's been feeding information to journalists and regulators. He's convinced there's a leak inside his organization. Shane Walsh is conducting interviews with every employee, and they're not being gentle about it. "Have they questioned you?" "Not yet, but they will. I'm on the list." "What do I do?" Daniel's mind raced. If Kelsey broke under interrogation, she'd reveal everything: his identity, the stolen ledger, the entire conspiracy. He needed to protect her, but he also needed to keep her in place as his inside source. Unless... "Kelsey, listen to me carefully. You're going to go to the police right now. Tell them you've been receiving threatening phone calls from someone connected to Prince Development. File a restraining order against Shane Walsh specifically. Make it official and public." "Why?" "Because once it's on record, Troy can't touch you without drawing massive suspicion. If anything happens to you after you've publicly accused his people of harassment, the police will come straight to him. It's insurance." "But won't that make him suspicious of me?" "He's already suspicious. This way, you're protected. And it gives you a reason to take time off from work without raising alarms. Tell them you're too scared to come in. Stay away from the office for a while." Kelsey was silent for a moment. Then, "Okay, I'll do it. And Kelsey, vary your routes. Don't go anywhere alone, and stay in public places as much as possible. These people are killers. Don't give them an opportunity." The restraining order made local news. Another black eye for Troy Prince, whose employee was now publicly accused of harassment. The optics were terrible, coming on top of the growing media scrutiny and construction delays. But Daniel had underestimated Troy's desperation. 3 nights later, Daniel returned to one of his safe houses, a short-term rental in Beaverton, to find the door ajar. Every instinct screamed danger. He drew his Glock and entered cautiously, moving room by room with practiced efficiency. The apartment had been tossed. Drawers emptied, mattress slashed, electronics smashed. Whoever had done this was searching for something, probably the ledger, and they'd been thorough. But they hadn't found anything, because Daniel never kept anything important in his safe houses. The real evidence was distributed across multiple secure locations, and the ledger itself was buried in Mount Tabor Park. Still, the message was clear. Troy Prince knew someone was hunting him, and he was hunting back. Daniel found the secondary message in the bathroom. Written in lipstick across the mirror: "We know who you are, Daly." His blood ran cold. They'd connected Jeffrey Stanton to Daniel Daly, which meant his cover was blown, his movements were probably being tracked, and he was now an active target. He had perhaps 60 seconds before Troy's people realized he'd returned. He grabbed a go bag he kept hidden behind a false panel in the closet and left through the back window, dropping into the alley just as a black Escalade pulled up in front of the building. Daniel ran. He made it 3 blocks before he heard footsteps pounding behind him. 2 men, maybe 3. He couldn't outrun them, not long term. He needed to disappear. He ducked into a crowded Thai restaurant, moving quickly through the dining area toward the kitchen. The staff shouted at him in Thai, but he ignored them, pushing through the back door into a narrow service alley. He could hear his pursuers entering the restaurant behind him. The alley opened onto a busy street. Daniel merged with pedestrian traffic, pulling a baseball cap from his go bag and putting it on as he walked. He kept his pace normal, resisting the urge to run. Running attracted attention. Behind him, he heard frustrated voices as Troy's men lost sight of him in the crowd. Daniel took a random bus heading downtown, then switched to the Max light rail, then caught another bus going east. By the time he was satisfied he'd lost them, he was in Gresham, miles from Beaverton. He checked into a motel using cash and a fake ID, then sat on the bed to assess the damage. Troy Prince knew his identity. That changed everything. He could no longer move freely in Portland. His face would be flagged by every security camera Troy controlled, every police officer on Troy's payroll. But it also meant Troy was scared. Scared enough to come after Daniel personally, which meant the pressure was working. Daniel made a decision. He'd been playing defense, staying hidden while he gathered evidence and applied pressure. But defense wouldn't win this war. It was time to go on offense. It was time to burn everything down. Chapter 6. The Alliance. Daniel spent the next 48 hours in digital communication with Alan Dixon, coordinating the final stages of their plan. Alan had been building a case based on the ledger's contents, working with federal prosecutors who specialized in corruption cases. They were close, very close, to having enough for indictments. But close wasn't good enough. Troy Prince was actively hunting Daniel, which meant time was running out. They needed to accelerate the timeline. "I can get you warrants within a week," Alan said during a secure video call. "Maybe sooner if I push. But Daniel, you need to stay hidden. If Prince kills you before we can move, this whole thing falls apart." "I'm not hiding anymore," Daniel replied. "I'm done playing defense." "What are you planning?" "I'm going to make Troy Prince confess." On camera, Alan's expression went from concerned to alarmed. "That's insane. He'll never confess, and even if he did, it wouldn't be admissible without proper warnings and procedures. I don't need it to be admissible in court. I just need it to be public." Daniel leaned forward. Troy's entire empire depends on his reputation. He's not just a real estate developer. He's a pillar of the community, a philanthropist, a family man. If that image shatters, everything collapses. Investors pull out, political allies distance themselves, the media tears him apart. I don't need a conviction to destroy him. I just need the truth to come out. And how exactly are you going to get him to confess? By giving him something he wants more than anything else, the ledger. Alan was silent for a long moment. "You're going to use yourself as bait." "Yes. That's suicide. Not if you're in position to move the second things go wrong. I need you to have a tactical team ready, federal marshals, FBI, whoever you can mobilize. The moment Troy makes a move on me, you come in with overwhelming force. He gets arrested, I get protection, and we have everything we need to take down his entire network. And if something goes wrong, if they kill you before we can intervene." Daniel's smile was cold. "Then you still have the ledger. It's buried in Mount Tabor Park, GPS coordinates I'll send you. If I don't check in every 12 hours, you retrieve it and proceed without me. Either way, Troy Prince goes down." Alan shook his head slowly. "You're gambling with your life. Troy Prince gambled with my wife's life. And he lost." Setting the trap required precise choreography. Daniel composed a message to Troy Prince through an anonymous email account. "I have your ledger. I'm willing to trade it for $1 million in cash. If you agree, I'll send instructions for the exchange. If you try to find me or harm anyone else, I'll release the ledger to the FBI and every major media outlet in Oregon. You have 24 hours to decide." He sent the email at 6 a.m. By 8 a.m., he had a response. "Who are you?" Daniel typed his reply with satisfaction. "I'm Daniel Daly. You killed my wife. Now I'm going to destroy you. But I'm willing to let you buy your way out for now. $1 million, or the ledger goes public. Your choice." The next response came within minutes. "How do I know you actually have it?" Daniel photographed a random page from his ledger copies and sent the image. 30 seconds later. "Where and when?" Daniel sent detailed instructions. Forest Park, the same curve where Erica had died. Midnight tomorrow. Troy was to come alone with the cash. Any sign of police or additional personnel, and the deal was off. He knew Troy wouldn't come alone. Men like Troy Prince never did. But that was fine. Daniel wasn't planning to come alone either. Alan assembled a team of 6 FBI agents and 4 federal marshals, all operating under a sealed warrant obtained through emergency judicial authorization. The warrant authorized them to surveil the exchange and intervene if Daniel's life was threatened. We'll have sharpshooters positioned on the ridge overlooking the road, Alan explained, showing Daniel satellite imagery of the location. 4 agents in 2 vehicles parked nearby, ready to move. Body cameras on everyone. The moment Prince or his people make a hostile move, we close in. What about Troy's people? He'll have counter surveillance. We're counting on it. We want them to see federal presence. That's part of the strategy. When Troy realizes he's walking into a trap, he'll panic. Panicked people make mistakes. Daniel nodded. The plan was solid. As solid as plans involving confronting murderers in isolated locations could be. The night of the exchange, Daniel arrived at Forest Park 3 hours early. The location was achingly familiar. He'd visited it twice since Erica's death, standing at the exact spot where her car had gone off the road. The curve was treacherous even in good weather, invisible in the dark until you were right on top of it. The perfect place to stage an accident. The perfect place for a reckoning. He parked his car, another purchased for cash Honda, off the road and walked to the designated spot. The FBI team was already in position, invisible in the forest darkness. Daniel wore a wire under his jacket, transmitting everything to Alan's command post. At 11:47 p.m., headlights appeared on the road. A Mercedes S-Class sedan, followed by the inevitable black Escalade. They stopped 30 feet from Daniel's position. 4 men emerged: Troy Prince, Shane Walsh, Mitch Douglas, and a 4th man Daniel didn't recognize, probably additional muscle. Troy walked forward slowly, hands visible, carrying a metal briefcase. Shane stayed close, one hand inside his jacket. Daniel Daly, Troy said as he approached. I wondered if you'd have the guts to show yourself. I wondered if you'd have the guts to face the man whose wife you murdered, Daniel replied evenly. Troy's expression didn't change. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. You had Shane inject her with sedatives, then stage her death as a drunk driving accident. All because she discovered your little real estate scheme. Daniel gestured at the curve behind him. Right here. This is where Shane ran her car off the road. You're delusional. Erica died in an unfortunate accident. I had nothing to do with it. I have video evidence that says otherwise. And I have your ledger documenting every illegal thing you've done for the past 5 years. Daniel nodded at the briefcase. Is that my money? Troy set the briefcase on the ground and kicked it forward. 1 million as agreed. Now give me the ledger. Daniel picked up the briefcase, opened it, and verified the cash. All there. He closed it and looked at Troy. You know this doesn't end here, right? You killed my wife. Money doesn't settle that debt. Then why are we here? Because I wanted to look you in the eye before I destroy you. Troy's mask slipped for the first time, showing genuine anger. You think you can destroy me? I own this city. I have connections you can't imagine. Whatever evidence you think you have, I'll bury it. I'll bury you. Is that a threat? It's a promise. Troy gestured to Shane. Kill him. Get the ledger. Shane pulled a gun from his jacket, but before he could aim, red laser dots appeared on his chest. 3 of them. Sniper sights. FBI. Alan's voice boomed through a megaphone. Put down your weapons. You are surrounded. Floodlights blazed to life across the forest. Armed agents emerged from concealment, rifles trained on Troy's group. The 4th man tried to run and was tackled within seconds. Shane dropped his gun, hands rising. Mitch looked like he might faint, and Troy Prince stood frozen, his face a mask of disbelief and rage. Troy Prince, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, racketeering, bribery of public officials, and fraud, Alan said as he approached with handcuffs. You have the right to remain silent. As the Miranda warning continued, Troy stared at Daniel with pure hatred. You set me up. I gave you exactly what you deserved, Daniel replied. Justice for Erica. You'll never make this stick. My lawyers won't be able to help you. We have your ledger, remember? Every crime documented in your own handwriting. Every payment, every bribe, every victim. We have witness testimony. We have video of you ordering Shane to kill me just now. You're done, Troy. For the first time, real fear flickered across Troy Prince's face. The invincible man realized his empire was crumbling. As federal marshals led Troy and his associates to waiting vehicles, Alan pulled Daniel aside. We need you to come in for a formal statement. And you're going to have to explain how you obtained that ledger. I found it during a burglary of my own house, Daniel said calmly. Troy's people broke in looking for evidence, and they left the ledger behind by mistake. I simply picked it up and brought it to you. Alan gave him a look that said he didn't believe a word, but he also didn't push. You know this isn't over. There'll be trials, depositions, testimony. You're going to be involved in this for the next year at least. I can live with that, as long as Troy Prince pays for what he did. Oh, he'll pay? We've got enough to put him away for 30 years minimum. Maybe life if the murder charge sticks. Alan's expression softened. You did good work, Daniel. Dangerous, insane, completely outside procedure, but good work. Erica deserved justice. She got it, thanks to you. As the federal vehicles drove away with their prisoners, Daniel stood alone in the place where his wife had died. The forest was quiet now, the chaos of the arrest fading. He thought about Erica, the woman he'd loved, the woman who'd betrayed him, the woman who'd tried to make things right and died for it. She'd made mistakes. So had he. But in the end, she'd tried to expose evil, and that counted for something. I hope you're at peace now, he said quietly to the darkness. It's finished. The wind rustled through the trees, carrying the scent of rain. Daniel turned and walked back to his car, leaving the past behind. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, testimony, media attention, rebuilding his life from the ruins. But tonight, he could rest. Justice had been served. Chapter 7. The Unraveling. The arrest of Troy Prince sent shockwaves through Portland. By morning, every major news outlet was running the story. Prominent real estate developer charged with murder, racketeering, and bribery. Miriam Harvey's investigative piece hit the Tribune's website simultaneously, providing devastating detail about Troy's scheme to defraud property owners. Within 48 hours, the dominoes began falling. Terrence Chapman resigned from the city council amid the ethics investigation, issuing a terse statement denying any wrongdoing but citing the need to focus on his legal defense. Two other councilmen linked to Troy through the ledger, Rita Flores and Gordon Hayes, also faced investigations. Harry Ayers, the corrupt building inspector, was suspended and later fired when federal investigators matched his cash deposits to payments documented in Troy's ledger. 3 other city employees were placed on administrative leave pending investigation. The Riverfront Tower project collapsed when investors pulled out, leaving a half-finished steel skeleton on the waterfront. Prince Development Corporation filed for bankruptcy protection as lawsuits mounted from victims seeking restitution. And Shane Walsh, faced with overwhelming evidence and a potential life sentence for Erica's murder, made a deal. He agreed to testify against Troy Prince in exchange for a reduced sentence. His testimony was devastating, confirming every allegation Daniel had made. Daniel watched it all unfold from a secure location, a safe house provided by federal marshals while the investigation continued. He gave formal statements, sat through depositions, and prepared for the trials to come. It was tedious, exhausting work, but necessary. On a gray December morning, 3 weeks after Troy's arrest, Alan Dixon visited with news. We found something in Troy's financial records, the detective said, spreading documents across the table. Money flowing to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. Millions of dollars over the past 5 years. Let me guess, skimmed from the real estate deals. Partially, but there's more. We tracked some of the payments backward and found they originated with a shell company called Cascade Holdings. Ever heard of it? Daniel shook his head. Neither had we. But when we dug deeper, we found that Cascade Holdings owns 23 properties in Portland, properties that Prince Development acquired through the usual intimidation tactics. Except Cascade Holdings predates Troy Prince by 15 years. Daniel's mind sharpened. Someone else owns Cascade Holdings. Yes, and whoever it is has been operating this scheme a lot longer than Troy. We think Troy was just the latest face of the operation, maybe even a partner rather than the mastermind. Who owns it? Alan slid a photograph across the table. Took us 2 weeks to crack through the corporate layers, but we finally found a name. Gilbert Terry. Daniel stared at the photo. Gilbert Terry was a man in his late 60s, silver-haired and distinguished, wearing an expensive suit. He looked like someone's grandfather. Who is he? That's the interesting part. Gilbert Terry was a real estate developer in the 1990s, very successful until he was indicted for fraud in 1998. The case fell apart when a key witness disappeared, literally vanished, never found. Gilbert walked free, but his reputation was destroyed. He supposedly retired to California. But he didn't retire. No, he created Cascade Holdings and rebuilt his empire quietly, using front men like Troy Prince to do the public-facing work while he stayed in the shadows. Allen pointed to financial documents. The money trail is clear. Gilbert was taking a 30% cut of every property Troy acquired. He's the real architect of this whole operation. Daniel felt a cold fury building. Where is he now? That's the problem. We don't know. Gilbert Terry disappeared from his Malibu address 3 days ago, right after Troy's arrest hit the news. We've got warrants out for him, but he's gone to ground. Could be anywhere, out of state, out of the country, who knows? He's running. Yes, and if we don't find him soon, he'll vanish permanently. Men like Gilbert have resources, contingency plans. He's probably been preparing for this possibility for years. Daniel stood and walked to the window, looking out at the Portland skyline. Troy Prince was in custody, his empire destroyed. But the man who'd really orchestrated Erica's death was still free. That was unacceptable. I want to help find him, Daniel said. Daniel, you're a witness, not an investigator. The Bureau is handling. The Bureau doesn't know him like I do. I've spent weeks studying this operation, understanding how these people think. Give me access to the files. Let me consult on the manhunt. Allen hesitated. I'll have to clear it with the prosecutor, but I'll see what I can do. The prosecutor, a formidable woman named Candace Thomas, agreed to let Daniel consult on the condition that he stayed in regular contact with federal marshals and didn't take any independent action. Daniel agreed, though he had no intention of honoring that restriction if a good lead emerged. He spent the next week immersed in Gilbert Terry's history, building a psychological profile. Gilbert was smart, meticulous, and paranoid, the kind of man who planned 10 steps ahead. He wouldn't run to an obvious location. He'd go somewhere he felt comfortable, somewhere with plausible deniability if caught. Daniel studied Gilbert's past, looking for patterns. The man had grown up in Oregon, specifically in a small coastal town called Waldport. His family had owned a fishing business there. Gilbert had left Waldport at 21 to build his real estate empire, but according to property records, he still owned his childhood home. It was a long shot, but long shots were all they had. Daniel took his theory to Allen. I think Gilbert might be in Waldport. We already checked his property there. It's empty. You checked it once, 3 days ago. He's had time to circle back, especially if he thinks you've already ruled it out. Allen considered this. It's thin. Everything is thin right now. But I know this man. He's arrogant, sentimental. He'd go back to his roots, somewhere he has emotional connection. Waldport fits. I'll send a team to check again. No, Daniel said. If you send a team, he'll see them coming. Let me go? I can do this quietly. Confirm if he's there before you move in. Absolutely not. You're a civilian consultant, not a field agent. I'm a trained negotiator who's been in more dangerous situations than most agents. I know how to read people, how to approach them. If Gilbert is in Waldport, I can confirm it without spooking him. Allen was silent for a long moment. Then, if I let you do this, and that's a big if, you go in wired, with full surveillance support. The second you confirm Gilbert's presence, you back off and let the professionals handle it. Understood. Understood. Waldport was a sleepy coastal town 2 hours from Portland, population 2,500, known mostly for its fishing harbor and quiet beaches. Daniel arrived on a Thursday afternoon, dressed in tourist casual, jeans, windbreaker, baseball cap. He looked like any other visitor escaping the city for some ocean air. Gilbert Terry's childhood home sat on a bluff overlooking the Pacific, a weathered Cape Cod-style house with peeling paint and overgrown gardens. It looked abandoned, but Daniel noticed fresh tire tracks in the gravel driveway. He parked his car a block away and approached on foot, the wire under his jacket transmitting to a Bureau surveillance van positioned 2 miles up the coast. Allen's voice crackled in his earpiece. We're getting clear audio. Proceed with caution. If you see any indication of hostiles, withdraw immediately. Daniel walked up the driveway, studying the house. Windows were dark, no obvious movement. But someone had been here recently. The tire tracks proved it. He knocked on the front door. No answer. He tried the handle. Unlocked. "I'm going in," he murmured to the wire. "Daniel, wait for backup." But he was already inside. The interior was dusty but recently disturbed. Footprints in the dust, a coffee cup on the kitchen counter still warm. Someone was definitely here. Daniel moved through the ground floor, clearing rooms the way he'd been trained. Living room, kitchen, study, all empty. He climbed the stairs to the second floor. At the top of the stairs, a door stood ajar. Light flickered from inside. A fire in a fireplace. Daniel pushed the door open slowly. Gilbert Terry sat in an armchair facing the fireplace, a glass of scotch in one hand, a revolver in the other. He didn't turn when Daniel entered. "I was wondering when someone would find me," Gilbert said calmly. "I expected the FBI. I didn't expect Daniel Daly." Daniel kept his distance, hands visible. "How did you know it was me? I make it my business to know about threats. When Troy was arrested, I researched everyone involved. You're quite the crusader, Mr. Daly. Destroyed a multi-million-dollar operation, all because of one woman. That woman was my wife. And you killed her. Troy killed her, actually. I advised against it, but Troy was always too impulsive." Gilbert finally turned to look at Daniel. Up close, his eyes were sharp and calculating despite his grandfatherly appearance. "She was a loose end, unfortunately. Nothing personal." "It was very personal to me." "I suppose it was." Gilbert took a sip of scotch. "So what now? You're here to arrest me? Kill me? I'm genuinely curious. I'm here to see you face justice." Gilbert laughed, a dry sound. "Justice? Such a quaint concept. You think justice exists for men like me? Even if you arrest me, even if I'm convicted, I'll be in minimum security for a few years before some well-paid lawyer finds a technicality. I've built too many safeguards." "Maybe, but you'll still answer for what you did." "Will I?" Gilbert's expression hardened. "You know, I've been in this business for 40 years. I've seen hundreds of idealistic fools like you. People who think they can change the system by exposing corruption. You know what happens to them? They get crushed. The system protects itself. Not this time. We'll see." Gilbert raised the revolver slightly. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave. I'm going to finish my scotch and make some phone calls. And by tomorrow, I'll be somewhere your FBI can never find me. I have resources, Mr. Daly. Resources you can't imagine. I'm not leaving without you. Then you'll die here." Gilbert's finger moved to the trigger. "I've killed before. One more won't matter." Daniel's hand moved to his jacket. "I'm armed. I doubt you're faster than a bullet." Tension filled the room. Daniel's mind raced through scenarios. Gilbert had the drop on him, but the man was 68 years old with slower reflexes. If Daniel moved fast enough. Alan's voice crackled urgently in his earpiece. "Tactical team is 90 seconds out. Do not engage." But 90 seconds might be too long. Gilbert seemed to make a decision. His finger tightened on the trigger. Daniel dove sideways just as the gun fired, the bullet splintering the doorframe where his head had been. He rolled, drawing his Glock, coming up with the weapon aimed at Gilbert. "Drop it," Daniel shouted. Gilbert fired again, wildly, the bullet going high. Daniel fired once, precisely, hitting Gilbert's gun hand. The revolver clattered to the floor. Gilbert cried out, clutching his bleeding hand. Footsteps thundered on the stairs, the tactical team arriving. Armed agents flooded the room, shouting commands. Gilbert was forced to the ground, zip-tied, read his rights. Alan appeared in the doorway, looking between Daniel and Gilbert with an expression somewhere between anger and grudging respect. "I told you to wait for backup," Alan said. He was about to run. "There wasn't time. You shot him." "He shot first. Self-defense." Daniel holstered his Glock. "And now you have him." Alan couldn't argue with results. Medics were already treating Gilbert's hand. Non-life-threatening, just enough to disarm him. He'd survived to stand trial. As they led Gilbert out in handcuffs, the old man looked at Daniel with something like respect. "You're better than I thought. Erica chose well, even if she was stupid enough to betray you." Daniel stepped closer, his voice low and cold. "Erica was worth 10 of you. She made mistakes, but she tried to make them right. You've spent your whole life hurting people and hiding behind lawyers and shell companies. When you're rotting in prison, remember that you lost to a grieving husband who wouldn't give up." Gilbert's smile faded. For the first time, he looked old and beaten. They took him away. Chapter 8. The Trial. The trial of Troy Prince and Gilbert Terry became the most high-profile legal proceeding in Portland's history. The prosecution, led by Candace Thomas, built an airtight case using the ledger, witness testimony from Shane Walsh and dozens of victims, financial records, and the video footage of Troy ordering Daniel's murder in Forest Park. The defense tried every tactic, challenging evidence, attacking witness credibility, filing motion after motion for dismissal. But the weight of proof was overwhelming. Daniel testified for 2 days, walking the jury through his investigation, explaining how he'd discovered the conspiracy, describing Erica's murder in clinical detail. The defense tried to paint him as a vigilante who'd conducted illegal searches and manipulated evidence, but he remained calm and factual, never rising to the bait. The most powerful moment came when the prosecution played the video Kelsey Waters had recorded, the footage of Troy and Shane murdering Erica. The courtroom went silent as they watched Erica being injected, dragged to her car, driven away to her death. Several jurors were visibly crying. Troy's lawyer objected to the video's admission, claiming it was obtained illegally. But the judge ruled that Kelsey had been acting as a private citizen, not a government agent, when she recorded it. The video stood. Shane Walsh testified next, providing first-hand account of the murder. He described how Troy had ordered him to make it look like an accident, how he'd sedated Erica and staged the crash. His testimony was devastating. "Did you feel any remorse?" the prosecutor asked. Shane stared at his hands. "Not at the time. I thought of it as just another job. But afterward, yeah. I think about her every day. What I did was wrong. Why did you do it? Because Troy paid me. And because I didn't think there would be consequences. Are there consequences now?" Shane looked at the jury. "Yes, and I deserve them." Gilbert Terry's trial was separate but ran concurrently. His defense was that he'd been a passive investor, unaware of the illegal activities Troy Prince conducted. But the financial records proved otherwise. Money flowed from Gilbert to Troy with clear instructions on property acquisitions. Emails and documents showed Gilbert planning the scheme, instructing Troy on which properties to target, how to apply pressure. The evidence was irrefutable. After 6 weeks of testimony, both cases went to the jury. Deliberations took less than 12 hours. Guilty, on all counts. Troy Prince was sentenced to 45 years for murder, racketeering, and bribery. With his age and the length of the sentence, it was effectively life in prison. Gilbert Terry received 30 years, with no possibility of parole until he'd served 25. At 68, it was equally a life sentence. Shane Walsh received 15 years as part of his plea agreement. He'd be eligible for parole after 10. Mitch Douglas was sentenced to 12 years for his role in the conspiracy. Terrence Chapman, Rita Flores, and Gordon Hayes all pled guilty to bribery charges and received various sentences ranging from 3 to 8 years. Harry Ayers and the other corrupt city employees received probation and fines, their careers destroyed, but avoiding prison time in exchange for cooperation. As the final sentencing concluded, Daniel sat in the courtroom gallery and felt the weight of months of stress finally lifting. It was over. All of them would pay for their crimes. Erica's death had been avenged. Outside the courthouse, reporters mobbed him. He gave a brief statement. "Justice has been served today. My wife, Erica, and the dozens of other victims of this conspiracy can rest knowing that the people who hurt them have been held accountable. I hope this sends a message that corruption won't be tolerated, no matter how powerful the perpetrators." Miriam Harvey, standing in the press crowd, shouted a question. "What will you do now, Mr. Daly?" Daniel paused. What would he do now? "I'm going to live," he said simply. "That's all Erica wanted, for me to have a good life. I'm going to honor her memory by doing exactly that." 3 months after the trials, Daniel stood at Erica's grave in Meadowbrook Cemetery. Spring had arrived, bringing new grass and wildflowers to cover the winter-brown earth. The headstone gleamed in the afternoon sun. He placed fresh flowers at the base of the stone, white lilies, her favorite. "It's done," he said quietly. "Everyone who hurt you paid the price. I kept my promise." The wind rustled through the cemetery trees, carrying the scent of blooming flowers. Daniel stood in silence for a long moment, saying a final goodbye. Then he turned and walked away, leaving the past behind. Kelsey Waters met him at a cafe in Selwood, the Blue Moon, now reopened under new management. They'd stayed in touch throughout the trials, forming an unlikely friendship built on shared trauma and purpose. "How are you holding up?" she asked as he sat down. "Better. Therapy helps." Daniel had started seeing a counselor, working through the grief and anger. "What about you?" "Same. I left Prince Development, obviously, and got a job with a nonprofit that helps victims of housing discrimination. Feels like good work, you know? Like I'm making up for everything I didn't do when I had the chance." "You did more than most people would have. You gave me the truth when it mattered." "We gave each other the truth," Kelsey corrected. "You gave Erica justice. That counts for something." They talked for another hour, two survivors trying to rebuild their lives from the wreckage. Eventually, Kelsey glanced at her watch and stood to leave. "Take care of yourself, Daniel." "You too." As she walked away, Daniel sat alone with his coffee and thought about the future. The consulting business he'd built was gone, too associated with the case, too much media attention. But Alan Dixon had offered him a job as a consultant with the Portland Police Bureau, helping train negotiators and working on corruption cases. It felt right, using his skills to help others, to prevent people from being victimized the way Erica had been. His phone buzzed. A text from Alan. "New case. Think you might be interested. Call when you have time." Daniel smiled slightly. The work continued. Justice was never finished. He typed a reply. "I'll call tomorrow." For now, he was going to sit here in the spring sunshine and breathe. He was going to remember the good parts of his marriage before everything went wrong. He was going to honor Erica's memory not with anger, but with the determination to make the world a little better. That's what she would have wanted. And that's what he would do. Chapter 9. The Closure. 6 months after the trials, Daniel Daly stood in the doorway of his new apartment in Northwest Portland. It was smaller than the house he'd shared with Erica, but it felt like his. No ghosts, no painful memories, just clean white walls and possibility. He'd sold the old house, unable to live there anymore. Too many reminders. The new place was a fresh start, just a few blocks from the waterfront, with morning light that poured through large windows. The work with PPB had been rewarding. Daniel trained negotiators in crisis psychology, worked cold cases involving corruption, and consulted on complex investigations. Alan Dixon had become a genuine friend, not just a professional contact. They met weekly for lunch, trading stories and building the kind of easy rapport that came from shared battles. On this particular morning, Daniel was preparing for a meeting with the Portland Victims Fund, a nonprofit organization that distributed restitution money recovered from Troy Prince's assets. Prince Development's bankruptcy had liquidated millions in properties and accounts, and that money was being returned to the people Troy had victimized. Daniel served on the board that decided disbursements. It felt like closing the circle, turning something evil into something that helped people rebuild. His phone rang. Agnes Miles, the elderly woman whose house he'd used for the Marcus Chin trap. "Mr. Daly, I wanted to thank you again," she said warmly. "The fund just sent my granddaughter's college tuition money. Full ride to Portland State. I don't know how to repay you." "You already did, Agnes. You helped me when I needed it. We're even." "Well, you're a good man. My granddaughter wants to study criminal justice because of what you did. She wants to fight corruption like you did." Daniel felt an unexpected surge of pride. "Tell her I said that's an excellent choice. And if she ever wants advice, she can call me." After hanging up, Daniel looked at the framed photograph on his desk, the only photo he'd kept from his old life. It showed him and Erica on their wedding day, young and hopeful, before everything went wrong. He'd made peace with her memory. She'd betrayed him, yes, but she'd also tried to make it right. In the end, she'd been brave enough to stand up to evil, even knowing it might kill her. That took courage. "I forgive you," he said quietly to the photo. "I hope you've forgiven me too." He meant it. Carrying anger would have poisoned the rest of his life. Forgiveness was the only way forward. That evening, Daniel met with a group of Troy Prince's victims at a community center. 12 people attended. Elderly homeowners, small business owners, all of them scarred by their experiences, but rebuilding. A man named Joseph Clark spoke first. He'd owned a restaurant in the Alberta Arts District before Troy targeted him, using health code violations and vandalism to force him to sell his property at a fraction of its value. "I lost my business, my life savings, everything," Joseph said. "But thanks to Mr. Daly, I got some of it back. The restitution fund gave me enough to start over. I'm opening a new restaurant next month." Others shared similar stories of recovery. A woman named Gladys McMillan had lost her family home, but the fund paid enough for her to buy a small condo. Harry Ayres, the former corrupt building inspector who'd cooperated with investigators, spoke about losing his career but finding redemption through community service. I made terrible choices, Harry admitted. I let money corrupt me, but I'm trying to make amends. I volunteer now, helping seniors navigate building permits and code compliance. It doesn't erase what I did, but it's something. Daniel listened to each story, seeing the resilience of people who'd been knocked down but refused to stay down. This was what justice looked like, not just punishment for the guilty, but restoration for the victims. After the meeting, a young woman approached him. She looked familiar, and after a moment, Daniel placed her. Christy McGee, the daughter of one of Troy's earliest victims. Her father had died of a heart attack 6 months after being forced to sell his property, the stress too much for his failing health. Mr. Daly, I wanted to thank you, Christy said softly. My father died thinking he'd failed our family, that he'd lost everything. But the restitution fund gave us back what we lost. My mother could keep her house. My brother could finish college. You gave us our dignity back. I'm sorry I couldn't save your father, Daniel said. You saved the rest of us. That's enough. As she walked away, Daniel felt the final piece of weight lift from his shoulders. He'd set out to avenge Erica, but somewhere along the way, it had become about more than revenge. It had become about protecting others, about preventing future victims, about making sure powerful men couldn't destroy lives without consequences. That was the real victory. 3 days later, Daniel received an unexpected visitor at his apartment. Veronica Lehman, Troy Prince's ex-wife. She'd divorced Troy during the trial, claiming she'd been unaware of his illegal activities. The claim was dubious, but prosecutors hadn't found enough evidence to charge her with anything. She'd walked away with nothing. Troy's assets were frozen and later liquidated, leaving her broke. She looked different from the elegant socialite Daniel remembered from the gala. No designer clothes, no perfect makeup, just a tired woman in jeans and a simple blouse. I don't expect forgiveness, she said when Daniel let her in. I know I benefited from what Troy did, even if I didn't know the details. I lived in that house, spent that money, enjoyed the lifestyle he built on other people's suffering. Then why are you here? To tell you I'm sorry. For what happened to your wife, for all of it. And to give you this. She handed him an envelope. Inside was a check for $50,000, made out to the Portland Victims Fund. It's all I have left after the divorce, Veronica explained. I got a job as a real estate agent. Ironic, I know, and I've been saving every penny. I want it to go to people Troy hurt. It's not enough, but it's something. Daniel studied her face, looking for deception. He found none, only genuine remorse. This is a lot of money, he said. It should be more. I should have seen what Troy was doing. I should have asked questions. I didn't want to know, and that makes me complicit. Her eyes filled with tears. I'm not asking for absolution. I just need you to know that I'm sorry. Daniel took the check. I'll make sure it goes to people who need it. Thank you. Veronica turned to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, what you did, exposing Troy, bringing him to justice, you saved lives. Other people who would have been his victims. That matters. After she left, Daniel sat with the check and thought about redemption. Not everyone involved in Troy's scheme was irredeemable. Some, like Harry Ayres and Veronica Lehman, genuinely wanted to make amends. Others, like Shane Walsh, at least acknowledged their guilt. The world wasn't divided neatly into heroes and villains. Most people existed in the gray areas, capable of both good and evil. The question was which impulse they chose to follow. Daniel chose to believe that people could change, could grow, could atone. Otherwise, what was the point of justice? On the 1-year anniversary of Erica's death, Daniel returned to Meadowbrook Cemetery. But he didn't come alone. Alan Dixon joined him, along with Kelsey Waters, Joseph Clark, Agnes Miles, and several other people whose lives had been touched by the case. They decided to hold a small memorial service, honoring not just Erica, but all the victims of Troy Prince's corruption. A local pastor spoke about justice, redemption, and healing. Joseph Clark read a poem about resilience. Kelsey shared memories of Erica, the good times, before everything went wrong. When it was Daniel's turn to speak, he stood before Erica's headstone and addressed the small gathering. A year ago, I was consumed by anger and grief. I wanted revenge. I wanted everyone responsible for my wife's death to suffer the way I was suffering. And in pursuing that revenge, I did things I'm not proud of, broke laws, put people in danger, nearly got myself killed. But somewhere along the way, revenge became something else. It became about protecting others, about making sure powerful people couldn't destroy lives without consequences. It became about justice, not just for Erica, but for everyone Troy Prince had victimized. Erica wasn't perfect. She made mistakes, and so did I. But she tried to make things right, and she died for it. I think she'd be proud of what we accomplished, not just bringing her killers to justice, but helping dozens of people rebuild their lives. That's her real legacy. So today, I'm not just mourning Erica. I'm celebrating her courage, her conscience, her refusal to let evil go unchallenged. And I'm grateful to all of you who helped me honor her memory by fighting for justice. The gathering was silent for a moment. Then, one by one, people stepped forward to place flowers on Erica's grave. White lilies, red roses, yellow daisies, a tapestry of color and remembrance. As the sun set over the cemetery, casting long shadows across the grass, Daniel felt something he hadn't felt in a year: peace. The fight was over. Justice had been served. The victims were healing, and he could finally let go of the anger that had driven him for so long. Erica was gone, but she wasn't forgotten. Her death had meant something. Her courage had inspired others. Her legacy would endure. That was enough. Later that night, Daniel sat in his apartment and drafted an email to the Portland Police Bureau, accepting their offer of a permanent position as a criminal justice consultant. He'd help train negotiators, work corruption cases, use his skills to prevent others from suffering the way Erica's victims had suffered. It was good work. Important work. Work that honored Erica's memory. His phone buzzed, a text from Alan. Drinks tomorrow? I'm buying. Daniel smiled and typed back, "You're always buying." But yes. He set the phone down and looked around his apartment. It was a good space, filled with light and possibility. The past year had been the hardest of his life, but he'd survived. More than survived. He'd grown stronger, found purpose, made a difference. Troy Prince was in prison, along with everyone who'd helped him. The corruption network was destroyed. Dozens of victims had received justice and restitution. And Daniel had transformed his grief into something constructive. Erica would have approved. He turned off the lights and went to bed, sleeping peacefully for the first time in a year. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new cases, new opportunities to help people. But tonight he could rest. The war was over. He'd won. And that victory felt earned. Epilogue. 5 years later, Daniel Daly stood in a conference room at Portland City Hall, addressing a room full of police officers, city officials, and community leaders. He'd been invited to speak about corruption prevention and victim support, sharing lessons learned from the Troy Prince case. The case had become legendary in law enforcement circles, a masterclass in taking down organized corruption. Daniel had written a book about it, The Graves We Dig, One Man's Fight for Justice, with proceeds going to victim support funds. He'd been featured in documentaries, spoken at law enforcement conferences across the country. But he'd never lost sight of why he'd started this fight. For Erica, and for all the victims who couldn't fight for themselves. As he finished his presentation, a young woman in the audience raised her hand. "Mr. Daly, do you have any regrets? About how you pursued the case, the risks you took?" Daniel considered the question carefully. "I have regrets about some of my methods. I broke laws, put people in danger, took justice into my own hands in ways that weren't always legal or safe. If I could do it over, I'd try to work more closely with law enforcement from the beginning. But do I regret fighting for justice? No, never. Sometimes the system fails, and ordinary people have to step up. I was lucky. I had skills, resources, and support. Not everyone does. That's why we need stronger protections for victims, better systems to root out corruption before it destroys lives. That's the real lesson of the Troy Prince case. Corruption thrives in silence. When we shine a light on it, when we refuse to be intimidated or bought off, we can change things. We can make the world better. And that's worth fighting for. The room erupted in applause. After the presentation, Alan Dixon, now a captain in the PPB, pulled Daniel aside. "Good speech. You've come a long way from the guy who threw USB drives out windows." Daniel laughed. "That feels like a lifetime ago." Because it was. "You're different now. Calmer, more settled. Happy even." I am happy. The work is good, the cases are interesting, and I'm making a difference. What more can you ask for? Speaking of which, I've got a new case that might interest you. City councilman taking suspicious payments from a development company. Sound familiar? Daniel's expression sharpened with interest. Tell me more. As they walked out of City Hall into the bright Portland afternoon, Daniel felt the familiar rush of purpose. There was always another fight, another injustice to expose, another victim to help. He'd spent 5 years building a new life from the ashes of his old one. He'd transformed grief into purpose, anger into action, loss into something meaningful. Erica's grave was still in Meadowbrook Cemetery, but Daniel didn't visit as often anymore. She lived in his memory now, not as the woman who'd betrayed him, but as the woman who'd found her courage and tried to make things right. That was how he'd chosen to remember her, and that choice had set him free. The fight for justice continued, and Daniel Daly was ready for whatever came next. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.